And we've already got some cool people trickling in here at PJ's, including Lewis and Drew, who are here, and we got a bunch more coming in. And that's where we're broadcasting today. And I have my PJ sweatshirt on. You can get yours here, by the way, and because it's cool enough for it. So hope everybody is doing well today. Going to be a fun show, a lot to get to. Joe Spano is going to join me shortly, and we'll talk a little, sport, a little gambling, and then Tracy Cowley is going to join me to do her LSU report, which should be pretty badass. So feel free to stick around. It's going to be a terrific show here on Halloween Eve. Since Halloween is All Hallows Eve, I don't know what you'd call this. I actually had to go by and pick up some candy in case some of the kids from the neighborhood show up tomorrow night. And welcome in Chuck D, who's already on his Cowboys. Okay, the pretty bad thing. Come on. Anyway, lots of stuff that I want to get to before we start. First off, thanks to B. Hannon, Chase, Donna, Todd S., Chris Perez for supporting the show. The Venmo's on there if you want to do it. I'm working on some big stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the show to hopefully keep this thing going for a while. I'm going to start off with the UH against Kansas State. That sucked. I mean, there's no way around it. I knew it was a tough spot because, they're coming off two emotional wins, an emotional win and an emotional loss against really good teams. And then traveling to Manhattan's never easy. 11 a.m. start, first time out of the state. Weather sucked. But you know what? That doesn't excuse 41-0. And as much as I love Dana Holgerson, I'm tired of hearing this is the Big 12. Well, this is the Big 12. You've been in the Big 12. You know what it's like. You've had 2 years to get ready for it. So please just stop with that. Meanwhile, I want to talk a little bit about the World Series. I haven't watched a second of it. Don't really plan to. And it's funny because all my friends who are Astros fans are like, oh, you should root for the Rangers because they're from Texas. Or, no, you should root for the Diamondbacks because we hate the Rangers. How about this? And this is just kind of a unique concept. How about you don't have to give a rat's ass? I mean, the reality is, if you're an Astros fan, you don't have to be a baseball fan. If you're a Texans fan, you don't have to be an NFL fan. Like the Rockets, I'll watch, but I'm not, and I'll watch some NBA games because I get interested in some of these new combinations and things like that. But for the most part, you don't have to root for anybody. How about just ignore it? There's better stuff to watch. And we got Monday Night Football tonight. We got Conference USA football tomorrow. And there's all kinds of things you can get into. So, yeah, you don't need to do that. I've watched the first three Rockets games. They're overmatched right now, but I do like what they have, and I think this team will get better as they move forward. And we'll see an exciting team by the end of the year. And finally, RIP to Matthew Perry. I know a bunch of you were Friends fans. I was not. I just wish when he was in that hot tub, somebody had been around to sing "I'll Be There for You." Too soon? Sorry. That show wasn't my thing. Just like How I Met Your Mother. It's like, how many years did they go around trying to figure out who the mother was? And I know I know the kid had a dad, but you know who didn't have parents and turned out okay? Bruce Wayne. Just put on a cape, man. And if you put on your cape, go over to the Phoenix on Westheimer. Penn State Bar, you can watch that. They got the Premier League. Great food, great staff, Champions League early rounds. How about the Dynamo next Monday in Game 2 of their series where they're up 1-0? And all kinds of great stuff going on there. And, yeah, you need to get over there. If you're a soccer fan, it's your place to be. That Champions League, they get all kinds of crowds. And whoever you support, you're going to find friends there. So the Premier League's always the best, though, on Saturdays and Sunday mornings. They're always packed. It's fun, and it's really cool to see people get into their teams. So check out the Phoenix on Westheimer. All right, we are going to before we get started, Joel's in the house. Raj is here. Raj back from Vegas. Flea's here. Lamont's here. Always a pleasure. And Said Boss, another great guy. I mean, all you guys are great guys. Appreciate you coming on board. As I appreciate the great Jose Spano for coming on board.
What's cracking, Freddie?
Not much. I thought of you the other day, and I know you watch all this stuff just like I do, but I think I've seen every John Gotti thing ever done. But I watched Get Gotti last week.
Uh-huh.
And, I think his name was Lacatio. He was a fat Joe Spano. I mean, like a really fat Joe Spano, but he sounded just
fatter
like
Joe Spano, because Joe Spano's pretty chunky himself.
Flea is asking how's the neck. It's actually much better. I had a therapy session today, and I felt as good as I ever have going in. And then it was a really tense session, so it's sore right now, but I've got full range. I can move it everywhere. I can, do all kinds of stuff. So thank you for asking. And I saw you at the beginning, Chucky D, I think. But all right, so let's get to some sport. College football this weekend. Not a lot of sexy games, but I mentioned the UH debacle. But Oklahoma losing to Kansas. I mean, that's the one that really stood out.
And you know what stands out more? It's that they lost to Kansas with their backup quarterback, Jason Bean. Jason Bean's a track star playing quarterback. He's as fast as anybody on a college football field. He was a high school track champion down in Texas. But he's a very limited thrower, and we saw that in this game. And, for Kansas to pull that off, that's a big blow to Oklahoma. I still think they end up in a Big 12 championship game against Texas, and with the Pac-12 potentially cannibalizing each other, one of Ohio State and Michigan losing because they play each other, there still may be a path for Oklahoma, as there may well be a path for Texas, but this loss certainly does them no favors and makes this a lot more difficult path to the playoffs than it would have been. And, you look back, they had trouble with Central Florida the previous week. Since that great rousing win over Texas in Red River, they've been dealing with a little bit of that post-Red River hangover, and it's been consecutive efforts where they've struggled. So, it's shocking. It hurts. And to lose to the backup hurts even more. But if you watch their form since Red River, I guess you really can't be entirely shocked.
Yeah, the interesting game this weekend that might impact all that is Kansas State, Texas, because Kansas State is playing as well as anybody right now. And they have a good record against Texas. I still think the Horns win and stay on pace. But Kansas State's not dead in this thing, and they're following almost the exact same path they did last season, where they lost 2 early games and then just got better and better and better. And I'm not going to give them too much credit for beating UH the way they did, but going back the last 3 games, they've been pretty damn dominant. What they did to TCU, usually you get 5 to 10 in prison for.
Yeah, and TCU's had their struggles. But you look at Texas, and I think their key to victory in this one is that defense has to continue to dominate. Because with the backup quarterback in there, the offense is not going to be as dynamic as it was with Quinn Ewers in there. You saw it against BYU. BYU, record aside, they're not very good. No. And Texas handled their business, and they took care of business handily. But the offense was far from dominant there, and their defense is going to have to dominate here, because I'm not sure with the backup quarterback the offense can bring enough if Kansas State is clicking on all cylinders, unless that Texas defense absolutely dominates on Saturday.
Anything else stand out at you from the weekend in college football?
Washington, 2 things. Penn State struggling. They got by. They struggled. A little bit of hangover there. And Washington, again, another situation, back-to-back hangover weeks now. Since they upended Oregon in a classic, they have not played good football. 2 hotly contested games against bottom-rung teams within the Pac-12 conference. And if they expect to get through the meat grinder that is the Pac-12, they're going to have to play better football, because they still have USC on the calendar. They still got Washington State. and they still have Oregon State all left to play in conference play. And if the way they're playing now, as good as they were against Oregon in that Classic and as good as they were leading up to that point, if they continue to play like this, they're not going to get through unscathed.
One team that I've gotten really interested in, mostly because I money-lined them on Saturday night and they won. Shout out to both Rice for covering 10 and Arizona for winning against Oregon State. And I kind of thought that was an indication that we might have to worry about Washington at the time. Turns out, since Arizona's changed quarterbacks, they lost that game barely. They lost to USC barely. They just clubbed Washington State in Washington. And then Saturday night, they beat Oregon State at home. And and it was a good win, and it was good for my pocketbook. But this is a part of the year where you see some teams like that maybe struggled early, but you do something like make a quarterback change, and suddenly you're a better team. And
and that quarterback change came out of necessity. Their starter was injured. So it wasn't one of those where it's like, all right, we're changing it. We're going to try and change things up. The starter got injured. They put this backup in, and I bet against them in a couple of spots. And as you said, since the backup's gone in there, they've played really well against some really good Pac-12 teams and has pulled off some upsets. So that's a good one to look at down the stretch as far as playing spoiler in a Pac-12 that not only has a lot of talent at the top, but with Arizona doing what they're doing, they've got some power in the middle and towards the bottom of that conference where, these star teams, the Oregons, the Washingtons, the Utahs, they might get picked off again along the way, or in the case of Washington, for the first time along the way.
Yeah, Utah just got hammered. That's first home loss in forever. And Oregon and Bo Nix look great. I think that's a team that they're not dead yet either, but they can't afford another loss. And other than the game against Washington, they really haven't had any real threats. I mean, they played a close game at Tech, but they were always a better team, and Tech's not an easy place to play. Welcome in BS Flea, and yes, that is a picture of Cushing behind me. It's Chewy. Half Nielsen's here. And Chuck's been saying Penn State's overrated all year. So I think
what the problem with Penn State is, Freddie? They got no wide receivers that can win. You look. Drew Allen's got nobody to throw to. There's nobody open down the field. They can pound the rock. They've got a good offensive line. They've got a dominant defense that certainly missed Chop Robinson on Saturday. But, they can't make yards through the air because their wide receivers simply can't win. And that's going to be the problem. They're just – it's a flawed team that when they meet the best teams in America, they're not going to be able to stand up. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I think the offense, which looked good early, but they were playing homeless guys. They're just not as good. And I think Aller's a good quarterback. I don't, but when nobody's open, what are you going to do? And, that you're not supposed to be playing Indiana that close. That's supposed to be a game where you're pissed off and you come out and you stomp a hole in them, their families, and everybody else they know. But, that one in Utah, without Cam Rising, they're not a threat to the top teams. It's just
they haven't figured out, that they've moved from quarterback to quarterback. They've tweaked the scheme. I mean, they've got the defense. They certainly have the coaching. Kyle Whittingham is as good a coach as there is in college football. But as you said, without Cam Rising, they just can't get out of their own way offensively. And man, it's bringing a pebble to an automatic weapon fight when you're Utah and you're trying to play Bo Nix in Oregon without Cam Rising. I mean, they just had no answers on offense to a team that really dominates in every facet. I mean, Oregon's explosive in the passing game. They can run the football. They're great in the trenches. They're a really, really good football team. And as you said a couple of minutes ago, they're not done yet, and I think they may well be heard from and find a way into this playoff picture. as teams start knocking each other off.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing about Penn State is they do have a good offensive line. Going back to them, but they're beat up and not playing well, and
Right.
that's another thing that's hurting them. All right, there's some other stuff I want to get to. Mainly something that Paranoid brought up on the Twitch. We'll do that as we transition to the NFL. But big weekend coming up in college football, especially in the SEC. And Tracy Cowley is going to join us for the SEC report after Joe, and look ahead to some really good games coming up this week, some big showdowns in the SEC. So, as you know, I love my college football, and I love to talk college football. But even this week was a little uninspiring. It was just a good betting week for me. But other than that, it just wasn't that exciting to watch. All right, because we've had some great games over the last few weeks. But all right, let's. I got to tell you guys about Piper's Plumbing. New sponsors to the show. Happy to have them. Great people. And, guys, you know how hard it is to find a plumber, especially a good one, especially an honest one. Well, if you want that, 832-632-2583 is your number. And listen, they take care of everything for you. They're licensed in the state of Texas. They're healthy, and they take care and safety. They can do plumbing, water heater replacement, tankless water heater installation, main water line repair and replacement, gas tests and gas line repair and replacement, and all kinds of stuff they can do for you. So if you need any kind of plumbing help, and let's face it, we all do at some point, based in League City, but they work all over the area, just give them a call. 832-632-2583 is the number. And before we get into the games, I want to get to something that Panda brought up, that the NFL basically coming out and telling UH not to use the Oilers colors anymore. Now, two thoughts about that. First off, the Rockets have been doing it for years now. Rice did it. Why on earth are they coming after UH? And second of all, how on earth can you claim a color is trademarked? And it's just dumb.
I mean, they didn't use the oil rig on the helmet. They used Houston script. I mean, it's a color. It's a color combination. I mean, you just can't call it Oiler blue. So, but that's typical NFL. I mean, Roger Goodell and his Machiavellian ways. I mean, he could try and do that to UH. He ain't gonna do that with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, because Adam Silver is an incredibly sharp guy, and Adam will tell him in a very nice way to go scratch.
Yeah, and I hope that's what UH does. I mean, it's but I'm curious to see. All right, if you're going to go after them, you need to go after Rice. You need to go after the Rockets because they've all been doing it, and it's just so typical NFL greedy. They just want money. I mean, that's all it is. They want money from the sales of the jerseys, I'm sure.
That's why you have Color Rush. That's why you have alternate, then other alternate, then throwback. I mean, you can't tell me those Steeler throwback jerseys that look like they're out of a Three Stooges short film are something cool that anybody wants to see on TV. But if it's an opportunity to sell something, we'll put it out there. Saw in the NFL today, they did the fashion show with the throwback jerseys and the alternate colors. It's all about sending people to NFLshop.com and get them to buy jerseys. The never-ending cash machine that is the National Football League.
Yeah, and I would just give them a little advice. Nobody in Houston is going to buy the Titans jersey. They're going to buy the UH jersey. And, that's why. And I also think, listen, the NFL is too big I want to say it's too big to fail now. And that's ironic because we know what happened with the movie Too Big to Fail. And I think all they do is try to impose their will on everybody, like they rule the sports world. I got news for you. For fans, you do. When it comes to business, no, you don't. So, yeah.
Too big to be petty. How's that? I mean, way too big to be this petty. Count your dollar. I mean, I understand worry about the dimes and the dollars will take care of themselves, but still, just stop being so damn petty. handle your business, take care of your product on the field. Make sure your Sunday ticket partner can actually get the games on the air, and handle your business, and stop worrying about doing Houston Oilers inspired jerseys. Try that on for size.
Yeah, and Lamont says I think we should stop saying NFL. This was a Titans ownership who still live in River Oaks. I'm sure they said something, but the NFL is the one who made the phone call. So, and Panda asked, "Do you think we'll ever have the Oiler name again?" I don't see it. And Flea says that NBC pregame and jersey fashion show skit, super goofy and lame, cheesy, even for JJ standards. Yeah, I'm not into that stuff. I don't really care. I do like alternate uniforms when they look cool. I don't go buy them. I mean, I tried to find a UH shirt from that, but I couldn't find one. But for the most part, yeah, I don't care too much about that stuff. Just get on the field and don't get your quarterback broken, which is kind of one of the themes of the day yesterday. Tyrod Taylor goes down, and they bring in some mafia guy who's probably related to Fat Joe Spano.
Lee DeVito.
And Kirk Cousins done for the year. The Falcons lose their quarterback and lose to the Titans. And Will Levis has the game of his absolute life. All of those things. Pickett goes down in Pittsburgh, and once again you get the Mitch Trubisky era. So kind of a rough day for quarterbacks, and it's that time of year where you start seeing injuries like this.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the attrition. I mean, in the case of the Giants, you have Daniel Jones already out. Now you got Tyrod Taylor behind a completely helpless offensive line, and Tyrod Taylor's an injury-prone quarterback anyway. The fact that you've got Daniel Jones down and inactive, you got Tyrod Taylor who's been injured every time he's every time he's ever won a starting job or started more than a few weeks in a row, he eventually gets injured. And you don't have anybody behind him as your emergency quarterback you actually trust to throw a forward pass past the line of scrimmage. That's bad planning by Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, and the entire New York Football Giants organization. And, you look at a game, they could have won this game. There's talk that Graham Gano's going to need surgery in the offseason, and he's at 100%. Go get a kicker off the street, make sure you can make real goals. And by the way, as well as Saquon Barkley played as far as grinding out yardage and running and having success when everybody knew he was going to run the football and there was, no disguising it, he went down almost untouched on a key run that could have also iced the game. So it's an element of, when you look at the New York Giants, this is a bad team that finds new and creative ways to lose. The Jets are a bad team that's finding new and creative ways to win. And while they're not good, they're above 500. And in an ugly but entertaining football game, they now have themselves in playoff contention with that offense, if you can believe it.
Yeah, and two things about that. On Gano's missed field goal, if you go back and watch the replay in slow motion, the defensive tackle for the Jets was going to block that kick if he didn't hook it. And so that was a really good play, and I think a key point of the game. But, you're letting a bum quarterback run right down the field to tie the game, and you're just finding ways to lose when you do that. And that'll lead me to the Texans, who the last drive yesterday was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen from a football team in terms of penalties on every play. Carolina was not going to beat them without help. And boy, did the Texans help. And then what the hell is this kid doing 5 yards offside twice in a row on the field goals and then getting a personal foul? Because even from that short, that field goal, if he's 15 yards back, he might have missed that thing. It's just stupid mistakes that cost you a game. And and the same thing kind of happened against the Falcons. And I like where the Texans are going. I do. I think they're much improved. But this is two games now that they've lost where, Okay, D'Amico, your defense is supposed to be your strength. Stop them on the last drive. Don't go out and get stupid penalties.
Well, these are the kind of things that as they get more experience and more frontline talent, I think they start to overcome. In watching the Texans, I do think they're extremely well coached. I think they've got a wealth of young talent. I think that this talent needs to grow up. They need to avoid the dumb mistakes, and they need to stop doing what bad football teams do, and that's find ways to lose games, opposed to finding ways to win games. I think that comes with experience. Another round of free agency, another round in the draft, where they upgrade the talent all around the football field. And I really think 2024 promises to be a very good year for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and they'll have money to spend in free agency finally too, because all those big contracts come off the books, and they'll be able to add some key pieces. I find it frustrating that you can't close, and it's one thing that in Atlanta they had a quarterback who couldn't miss and played the game of his life. That wasn't the case yesterday. The case was they kept getting stupid penalties all the way down the field on the last drive, and then accentuated it with the dumb personal foul. Those are things that, experience is great for that, but you can't coach stupidity either. And that was just stupid. So, all right, let's get to some of the other games. The Cowboys looked pretty good against the Rams. Dak Prescott with a big day. CeeDee Lamb looked terrific. And, this is kind of the Cowboys. They are so hit and miss.
Yeah. And the Rams have come crashing back to earth. Rams got off to a very strong start. They very quickly moved up a lot of teams' power rankings, and people were very excited about that Rams offense. Nobody was really excited about the Rams defense, but everybody was very excited about the Rams offense, and people had them as a borderline playoff team. We've now seen over the last 3 weeks the Rams come crashing back to earth and look a lot more like what we expected this team to look like coming into the season. Some moments on offense, but a far from dominant offense, and a simply brutal defense that can't stop anybody. And, it's a team that's going to be on the outside of the playoff picture, and they'll be, they're a bottom third of the league team right now. They're just not very good, and they've kind of reverted back to the form we all expected them to have coming into the year after getting off to a pretty strong start and impressing people.
Yeah, let's move on to the Vikings, who have won 3 in a row, looking pretty good at 4-4. Except Kirk Cousins is now dead.
Season's over.
Yeah.
They don't have a quarterback on that roster that can step in and give them anything close to what Kirk Cousins gave them. And with no Dalvin Cook, this is a team built on that quarterback. And they now don't have that quarterback. So win 3 in a row, get back to 4-4. You don't have that quarterback. For all intents and purposes, that season's now over. The season's now over for them. I don't see anybody on the street that they can go and get that's going to give them what they need to actually carry this team. Because the way they're built, the quarterback has to carry the team. There's nobody on the street that can do that for them.
Well, I would say trade deadline tomorrow, and there are some quarterbacks who have had experience in this system. They're not going to be Kirk Cousins, who was having probably his best season, and that's always the way it goes, right? You're having your best season and then you break. But I look at that division. The Bears are not good. The Packers are clearly not good. I think total fool's gold the first couple of weeks, and if they can get. Yeah, I've heard Colt McCoy thrown out there, Case Keenum. Those are guys who can win games for you. They're not going to get you to a Super Bowl, but they might get you to the playoffs. And, so they may be making a move. I think they have to. At 4-4, when I look at that division, the Lions are I think, the class, but I'm not ready to anoint them yet. They still are. This is the first time they're doing anything, so anything can happen with them. I think they have to make some kind of move, and I think it's possible that it winds up being a quality backup like that. So,
and I just don't know that with the way they're built, where it's so quarterback centric that quality backup type, the Case Keenum, the Colt McCoy, can make enough plays, which is what they're going to need to get them into one of those last couple of wild card spots. I mean, it's a possibility, and they've got to do something. I just don't think the answer's out there.
Well, I would say, Justin Jefferson will be back, and that's a big help for anybody. That would make you or me look good at quarterback. So,
True.
I'm not saying they can be Super Bowl contenders, but I think they could be playoff contenders if they got the right guy. Kevin O'Connell's a sharp coach. Saints are in at 4-4 after they go in and beat the Colts yesterday. Those 4-4 teams are all still technically in the playoff hunt at this stage of the season, halfway through.
Oh, sure. And, with the Saints, if they truly figure out this offense, they're going to be okay. And they can emerge from this pack of 4-4 clubs. Because the realities are it's an elite defense in New Orleans. That defense is elite on all three levels. And Dennis Allen leading that defense is an elite defensive coach. Pete Carmichael and Derek Carr, absolutely not on the same page offensively.
No.
And if you've watched any Saints games, you watch the frustration that Derek Carr works with on a weekly basis. If my quarterback was throwing a hissy fit like that on the field on a constant basis, every time a play didn't come in on time, I might pull him down. I might sit him next to me and say something to him and say, hey, you can't show us up like this. It's actually quite disturbing. So if they can get that communication, which has been a major issue, and Derek Carr has talked about it, getting the plays into him on time in these key third down situations. If they can get the communication straightened out, and now with Kamara kind of hitting his stride after the suspension and some of the other pieces, if they can get that offense to be somewhere around league average as opposed to bottom of the league with that defense, amongst those 4-4 teams, they're probably the best of the bunch in the NFC.
Yeah, I just worry about the coaching. And actually, one of my favorite Halloween costumes I saw yesterday when I came over here to PJ's to watch the game. And they do a nice little spread on Sundays where everybody brings food and, watch the Texans, and everybody was miserable yesterday. But she was a Saints fan, and she went as the offensive coordinator and had like a playbook, and every play was like Kamara up the middle, get play in late, stuff like that. It was hilarious. So,
Pete Carmichael, and here's the thing. He didn't want this job. They kind of forced him to take the OC job. It's a really, really weird mix there. And ultimately, that offense, I believe, could be their undoing.
All right, Jaguars go in and beat the Steelers. I like this because Travis Etienne had a big day in fantasy for me. But, the Steelers, they lose Pickett. Trubisky's in there. Who knows how long that's going to last? Steelers may be the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the league. They look like garbage one week and lose, and then they look like garbage one week and win. And I just cannot figure them out.
No, they're hard to bet on. They're hard to bet against. And on the other side of the coin, Jacksonville's starting to find their stride. I don't think the final score really tells the story of that game.
No.
The Jags left a lot of points on the field in this one. Between turnovers and settling for field goals, they could have ran away with this game. This game could have been over at halftime.
Yeah, and, the one thing I would just say about that particular game, if you look at the team stats, 377 total yards for the Jags, 261 for the Steelers. That usually indicates a much, much bigger gap, right? So,
you kick field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, and you let teams hang around. Sometimes it bites you. The Steelers didn't have the ammunition to make it happen, so the Jags took care of their business. I think the Jags are pretty darn good and a team we're going to have to keep an eye on in the AFC.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add on this one. Eagles get by the Commanders and in a close game, but the Commanders seem to always give the Eagles fits.
Yeah, and the Eagles offensively aren't clicking on all cylinders. The change in offensive coordinator with Shane Steichen getting the job in Indianapolis has really hurt. That, and there's talk of of some sort of mysterious knee injury for Jalen Hurts. So there's some issues around that Eagles offense that it's not nearly as dominant as it was last year. If they find stride there, they'll be just fine. But I think, you might see this on a weekly basis where the Eagles, you keep waiting for them to kind of turn the corner and hit stride. I just don't know when it happens. They've kind of been, after the first 2 weeks where they kind of took care of their business, they've kind of been up and down this year.
All right, real quick on these last few. Seahawks beat the Browns. Nice drive at the end. Seahawks were good early and good late and bad in the middle. Browns defense is really good, but it's hard to go out and win a lot of games with P.J. Walker.
Here's the sad part. It's hard for them to win games with Deshaun Watson. The truth is, Deshaun Watson hasn't played much better at the quarterback position than P.J. Walker has for them this year. So the bottom line, it's hard for them to win games with that offense, period. As for Seattle, they could stop the run. They can run the football. When Geno Smith doesn't make silly mistakes, with that set of wide receivers, they're pretty darn good. And they added pass rush and a stout interior defensive lineman in Leonard Williams here from the Giants. Giants are starting to trade people out now that they're out of playoff contention. And I think that'll help their defense. Seattle's pretty good. I don't know that they're upper echelon, but they're pretty good within the ranks of the NFC.
And right now they're in first in the NFC West after the Niners. Niners lose to the Bengals. And Bengals look good. The other games that just touch on briefly, the Ravens beat the Cardinals, kind of expected that, obviously. But the game that obviously surprised everybody was the Broncos beating the Chiefs.
It just laid Chiefs just laid an egg. There's talk that Mahomes wasn't feeling well. 17 games in an NFL season. Even the best of teams, they just have one of those weeks once in a while where they lay that egg. Chiefs laid the egg on Sunday. San Francisco laid an egg again. That's getting worrisome now. Brock Purdy, the warts are being exposed a little bit when they have to ask him to do more. And, you mentioned Cincinnati. Everybody was worried, Burrow dealing with the injury. Now that he's healthy, you see that offense looks like we all expected. And it's a pretty darn good offense with a pretty darn good defense with a pretty darn good defensive coordinator. The Bengals are on the come. They're a team to really watch out for in the AFC.
All right. Well, real quickly, any thoughts on the game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Las Vegas is brutal. I think Detroit takes care of their business here. It's indoors, so Goff will like those conditions. I expect the Lions offense to look good and kind of dominate this game. And the Lions, who nobody thinks much of their defense, have been pretty tough on defense this year. Go back to game one against the Chiefs. And throughout, they really do a good job of limiting points. They're tougher on defense than we expect. I think this is one where Detroit kind of runs away. They run away and hide. I think they control this from stem to stern. I don't think the Raiders can challenge them much at all tonight.
All right, Joe, appreciate you coming on today. As always, we will do it again very soon. And great stuff. So
my pleasure, man. Right back at you, man. I look forward to doing it again with you real soon, buddy.
All right. Okay, before we bring in one of our favorite people, Tracy Cowley. She's gone way up the power rankings here in a few weeks, so looking forward to having her on. But first, I need to tell you about Lanham Industries. And guys, this is your place on Lake Livingston to get anything you want. You want to get a house up there, they can help you find the right one. They've got all the best vacation home service needs, or if you live up there, how about this? Cleaning, lawn care, laundry, maintenance, inventory management, property management. All of those things are available. Highly trained and dedicated crew, veteran owned and operated. Andrew's a great, great guy. They get 5-star ratings from guests and owners and from everybody on the planet who's just heard of them, gives them a 5-star rating. So give them a call, 936-581-6166. Or go online to lanhamindustries.com. And if you can't remember that, just hit me up at the Falconcast at yahoo.com. Before we get to Tracy, I want to kind of let you guys know what I'm trying to do with the podcast here. Right now, I am selling off some shares, and if you're interested in being a part owner of the Falconcast or a significant owner of the Falconcast, hit me up at the Falconcast@yahoo.com. The plan is with the new partners, we'll have enough capital to hire a real ad person besides me who has ties hopefully to Lake Charles and has ties to Poker Go and all of these kind of potential advertisers that I just don't have access to. And with that person, raise the value of the site, which is already profitable. So you're buying into a profitable business. And the other part of it is I really want to expand the Falconcast into several podcasts. I've got a group of writers that are going to do a writers podcast. I've got some musicians that'll do a musicians podcast, and all of those are all things our ad salesperson can go out and sell. And I think one of the coolest things to have would be an SEC podcast with Tracy Cowley. What's up, Tracy? I almost did it again.
That's awesome, Fred. No, it is. I just want you to know it is Hate Bama week. So probably wearing my LSU gear already and super excited. So about this weekend, I think it's the best weekend we'll see in the SEC this whole year.
Yeah, it's up there. And we were talking about some of the games earlier. Let's start with this one, though. I find this one interesting. I still think Georgia turns it up when they need to, although missing Bowers is huge for them. But the reality is they're so good on the offensive and defensive lines. They're just so hard to beat there. But Missouri surprised me. And I think you go back and look, one of the more impressive wins they had was that Kansas State win.
Absolutely. That win, and also Kentucky, going on the road to Kentucky. They beat Kentucky in Kentucky and kind of dominated that game, if you remember chatting about it. And Georgia is so tough. I mean, look what they just did to Florida. They're not as dominant on their lines as they were the last 2 years, but it's still good enough to where it shows on Saturdays. The thing that I see, though, is that I think Mizzou can take advantage of them in the passing game. Mizzou is very capable of scoring. Their quarterback Cook is doing very well. Georgia is averaging 40 points a game. They're only giving up 14. Mizzou is averaging about 33 points a game, but giving up 23. So can Mizzou score enough to make it a game? I think it's 16 points right now spread. Yeah, and that's in Georgia. So it is a day game, which helps a little bit. It's a noon kickoff, 11 o'clock kickoff. So that will help a little bit. But I do think Mizzou may put pressure on them in the first half, but Georgia pulls away in the second half.
Let's talk a little bit about Aggie, and before we get into this week's game, I want to get into last week. And I saw some odds today, which I think you'll find interesting.
Okay.
First college football coach to be fired in the NCAA. The favorite, Jimbo Fisher. Right behind him is my guy Dana Holgorsen. So
wow.
Yeah, 4-1.
I'm surprised Dabo's not up there.
I think Dabo's untouchable. I mean, he's baby Jesus up there.
I know, but 4-4 is rough.
Yeah, I'll give you some other names. Dave Aranda 5-1, Justin Wilcox 6-1, Mike Loxley, Tom Allen 7-1, Ken Wilson, Butch Jones, Danny Gonzalez, Brent Pry, Billy Napier 14-1. Sam Pittman.
Billy Napier already. Wow.
Well, I mean, it's Florida, right? And even he says that, they have higher expectations than being Kentucky in the SEC, which is kind of what they are right now. So
it is, but who's going to beat Georgia out there? I still don't think Tennessee's going to do it this year. They don't have the offense. I think that's a little bit odd. But Jimbo, how do you do? I get it. They have fat cows sitting on wallets out there in Aggie land, but $76 million to throw away and burn is a lot. It is a lot. But I mean, to them, I was going back and forth on Twitter with an Aggie, and he's like, well, if we're 8-4, that's better than 5-7. I didn't realize that 8-4 was where you strive to be, because
Right.
they always seem to be the middle of the pack. They're never really in the mix to win the SEC West. And Brian Kelly comes in with a mess, a dumpster fire, puts a team together and wins the West last year, and has a good chance to do it again this year.
Well, and I think that's the thing. It's just Jimbo is not getting the best out of these kids, and it's pretty obvious. And even watching the South Carolina game, well, they pulled away late. It was just that
the defense
and their offensive line looked horrible.
Yeah,
early on in the game, they were giving up sacks to guys who probably should be in junior college.
I agree. South Carolina is loaded with injuries too.
Now. They were down. They were starting their 8th offensive line of the year, and then they got one of their guys hurt. And it's just you have to take care of business there. And you can give me the we were looking ahead to Alabama thing, but coming off a loss to Tennessee, you needed to show more than that, and
especially at home.
And now they get the big dogs, and
they got a test.
Not Alabama. I'm sorry.
Ole Miss.
Yeah, because Bama is your guys.
Yes.
But no, Ole Miss is no joke. And Lane Kiffin, his teams can score. They can run the football.
Yes.
They can definitely throw it. Defensively,
they're going to throw the ball on Aggie.
Yeah.
That is one of their weaknesses, is their secondary. They will throw the ball on Aggie. Jackson Dart will run as well. And that's going to create some space for their running backs as well. Aggie is ranked 7th in defense, but I think that's going to be put to the test this week. Ole Miss can get sloppy, though. They let Arkansas kind of hang around. That was kind of a hangover game against the big win against LSU. But I think being at home, I think they're going to pull away from A&M late. And I don't see where the offense is going to come from A&M.
All right, let's get to LSU, Alabama. And it's Chewy says, I wouldn't be so sure because right now LSU has concerns on defense and also special teams. Possible they could beat Alabama, but the Tide can make mistakes and make one pay. LSU will have to win without making many mistakes. One thing I will say about LSU, and you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, defensively, they were horrible early. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But I think the light kind of came on in the second half of that Missouri game, and they've been pretty good ever since. And I mean, I'm not going to go and start to quote the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Let's not start bleeping each other's bleeps just yet. But with Army, but still, I think they've made some changes and some fixes.
I think the biggest fix is Harold Perkins Jr. Letting him roam and come off the slot position. I think he is going to be a factor in this game. He has to be, really, for LSU to win. And Milroe is prone to mistakes. And that, let's be real, that offensive line has given up 30 sacks this year. That is a massive problem. That is the strength of LSU's defense, is their defensive line. They are down a defender there, and they're down a few secondary. But the guys coming up are freshmen, and from what I'm hearing, there's some confidence in what they could do. And if they just do it, if they execute what they're supposed to execute, they could give Bama trouble. And if you think about it with that offense, they just need 2 or 3 stops in an entire game to win that game, because Bama is going to have issues slowing LSU's offense down.
All right, so give me I know your prediction on that game, but give me your prediction on the other two.
I think Ole Miss wins. I think it's going to be a closer game at first, but then they pull away and win by 10. And I think Georgia covers.
Yeah, and I wonder, and we've talked about the buyout with Jimbo, but if they get their butts blown out by Mississippi, which I could see, are those odds on him at plus 400 to be the first coach fired worth taking?
Possible. But I would want to ask, who are you going to replace him with?
Oh, they'll go spend a fortune on whoever the best guy out there is.
There were rumors on Twitter, Dabo, and I'm like, you'd be silly to go get Dabo and pay him any amount of money.
Yeah, Dabo's career track is kind of starting to take the same.
It's fading because he doesn't believe in the transfer portal, and he says really silly things. And it just, in this day and age, it's going to be really hard to keep recruiting at the level he's used to. competing against the transfer portal, NIL. It's going to be really difficult for Clemson to stay relevant, especially with Florida State coming on as strong as they are, and especially in the NIL game.
Yeah, and I think there'll be some, like maybe Jim Harbaugh suddenly becomes available or somebody like that.
I think Harbaugh's one of the Bears. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see that experiment there lasting much longer either. So anyway, all right. Well, hey, I'd be remiss to ask you about your 49ers. Are you worried?
Oh man, it's been a rough 3 weeks for me. If I would have had one of those Dallas Cowboy TVs, I would have done the same thing. But they've got a bye week to try to regroup. They have the talent, they have the guys. The problem is, can they stop anybody? Because it seems like they can't stop anybody. And can they give Purdy a lead to where he feels comfortable? He is still a very young quarterback, put under a lot of pressure the last 3 games.
Yeah, I'm giving him a pass for last week because he's coming off concussion protocol.
He is.
And I've never seen a quarterback come off a protocol the day before and go out and play well.
In that Cleveland game, he drove down the field to win that game. His kicker missed a field goal.
Yeah. So
or they'd be only 2 losses right now.
Yeah, let's not punt on him just yet. But yeah, and are you paying attention to your Avs?
I am. It's still early in the season. I know they lost to a team 4-0. I forgot who it was. Was it Chicago Blackhawks? Maybe.
Yeah, I can't remember. I've been watching so much hockey, I can't keep track anymore. I loved it. I loved it when the Blackhawks and the Vegas Golden Knights were doing Nevada Day and playing in the middle.
Oh
of the
yeah,
game. That was awesome.
Yeah. Hockey's amazing right now. And they did, I don't know if you watched, it was kind of like the Red Zone channel for hockey last week.
Yeah, I loved it.
That was amazing. They need to do that again, for sure.
Yeah, that was the Leafs led off the whole thing. So obviously I watched that game. And then everything else was on the fly, and it was just awesome. But
my goal to get to an Av home game this year.
Yeah, I haven't talked to you since the Avs won, and I mean it's been a couple years. So congratulations.
They were supposed to win last year, though. I was so pissed because they got knocked off by the Kraken. They would have won last year if they would have just gone through the motions of playing through the playoff.
I think they were a different team last year than the year before, because if they were the team from the year before, I agree. Last year's team wasn't going to beat the Knights.
They had major injuries last year.
Yeah.
Major injuries.
And that's nobody's fault. But they're going to be good for a long time as long as Cale Makar is on the roster.
Yes. And he's amazing. And Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah. I mean, they're just always going to be good. All right, Tracy. Always a pleasure.
I just want to say real quick, if anyone's down to watch, to have a great time, LSU's having a watch party at the Drift this Saturday at 6:45. There's going to be outdoor tent, music, food trucks, lots of alcohol.
That sounds awesome. Where is that located?
That's in the Heights. It's in the Heights. It's the Drift in the Heights.
Okay.
I think it's off 23rd Street, I think.
All right. That's not too far for me. I mean, I might.
No, you should come by because there's going to be a lot of women who, they have a lot of intoxicated women there, a lot of intoxicated men there.
That's not my favorite type.
And they just do the LSU fight songs and everything. So it's a great time.
Well, LSU women are hot. So if you assure me there'll be single women there, I'll think about it.
I'm sure there will be, Fred. I'm sure
all right.
there will.
All right, buddy. I will talk to you next
Fred.
week. Can't wait to recap all these games with you. Have a good one.
Thanks, Fred.
All righty. All right. Somebody's going to have to give me a ride over there, though. That's the only problem. But anyway, I got to tell you about Dr. Linville, who was supposed to excuse me. Dr. Linville just does such a great job with the NeoGraft procedure. No anesthesia, just numbing medication, minimal pain. Over 95% of the grafts take because grafts are handled and prepared safely. Almost certainly more than that did for me out of the 95. And he comes up with an individualized plan for each and every patient. It's only $4 a graft right now. It's a special for $3.50 a graft. And guys, if you want to do something nice for your ladies for Christmas or the holidays, whatever you celebrate, then get your hair done or get something done for her because he's the best plastic surgeon in the history of the known universe. If you want to check it out, free consultation. If you sign up here, hairspecialisthouston.com facebook.com/getfalconhair. And if you just call or go by and tell them you heard about it on the Falconcast, your consult fee is waived. That's $150 value. You need the best doctor on the planet? Go see my man, Dr. Linville. All right, a couple of things here before we wrap it up. My TV report this week is Bosch is dropping 3 episodes a week on Freevee, Bosch Legacy. So far, I'm going to say it's not as good as season 1, and season 1 wasn't as good as the original Bosch, but pretty good. It's solid, and I'm enjoying it. And so, if you are looking for something to watch, I will say I've pretty much ejected on Loki. It's just the plot lines make the Matrix look like Little Boy Blue. So I just, and I like that kind of stuff. Police says intoxicated women with daddy issues. Fred's kind of gal. Yeah, I might be about that. I mean, we don't know. At this point, guys, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm gonna get this business built up where it needs to be, and and then we'll see. I don't have time right now, and I'm just not real interested because everyone I've met is, they all start out great, and then it frankly just turns to shit, and that's probably me. I mean, look at my track record. I got more losses than the Panthers. So anyway, I'm going to tell you about Lawyer Dave real quick. He's off on a case out of town, so he was going to try to call in, but maybe he got a flight home. But Lawyer Dave is your guy. If you have any kind of legal issues, give him a call, 713-626-8900. He and I were here last night watching a little football before he had to leave this morning. And great thing about Dave, you don't pay for a thing unless you win your case. He'll send you to a doc. He sent me to a great doctor for my back, and as you could tell, man, look at the head. I mean, he's done wonders for me. But if you're in an accident, you give him a call, because the insurance companies have their guys. You need yours, and that's Lawyer Dave. So if any kind of accident, but if you have any legal question, and he answered a bunch for you last Thursday, and we're going to do that again soon, where you ask him and he can refer you to another lawyer if it's not something he does. And he's a great front man for his firm, and a great friend. And please, if you ever need the number and you can't remember it, you can always hit me up, DM me on Twitter, or email thefalconcast@yahoo.com, which is at the bottom of the screen, as it always is, and he'll take care of you. Need a lawyer? You better dial Dave. All right, before we wrap it up today, I have a couple of old people stories for you. And when I say old people, I don't mean me, because I'm old, but this is old creatures, not just old people. I don't know if you guys saw this, but last week, a 104-year-old woman went skydiving to try to become the oldest skydiver in history. But to quote the late, great poet, the poets from Airplane who wrote the script, Leslie Nielsen said it. Irony can be pretty ironic sometimes. She died a little more than a week after she potentially broke the world record. And it was before the Guinness Book could actually confirm it and tell her that she was the oldest woman to ever jump out of an airplane. First off, 104 is a hell of a run. And the fact that she was able to skydive. But, would have been nice to know, right? And how about this? What do you think the world's oldest dog is? How old? Over, under? Well, I'll tell you. 31 years old. A 31-year-old dog in Portugal had been the world's oldest dog. He has died also. Died over the weekend in a veterinary hospital. We know what that means. We don't have to sugarcoat that. But, lived in Portugal with 4 cats, which that's tough. That's worse than having 4 wives. But, 31 years old. So we got 104 for a human and 31 for, wait a minute, 31, what's that in human years or dog years? I get confused. Anyway, so that's what old people do. They die. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Be back with AJ on Thursday, and hopefully we'll have some announcements for you about some really cool stuff that's about to happen. But until then, stay sportsy, Gulf Coast badasses.